She had been folding laundry in the quiet of her apartment when something slipped out from between the sheets, a small, crumpled receipt. At first, she thought it was just trash until she noticed the description, a ring. A ring she never received. Questions erupted in her mind. Why was it here? And more importantly, who had bought it?
Hello, my friends. I am Olivia, and this is Olivia's Love Stories. I hope you enjoy this story.
I remember that evening vividly. The apartment was quiet, the hum of the dryer echoing softly against the walls, a soundtrack I often relied on to think. I was folding the last batch of laundry, my hands smoothing out wrinkles mechanically, when a small slip of paper fluttered to the floor. At first, I ignored it, assuming it was just one of those forgotten grocery slips or a note that had slipped from my purse. But something about the way it landed, it was almost deliberate, made me pause. I bent down and picked it up. The paper was thin, faded at the edges, and when I unfolded it, my breath hitched. It was a receipt for a ring. A beautiful, delicate band adorned with tiny diamonds that shimmered even in the dim light of my kitchen. My mind spun. I had never received a ring, not from my ex, not from anyone. I stared at the receipt like it was a riddle I could almost solve, the numbers and letters dancing across the page in a way that felt taunting. Lately, life had been a blur of routine and quiet disappointment. I worked long hours as a freelance editor, spending evenings in my apartment surrounded by half-read novels and empty coffee mugs. Love, it seemed, had chosen to elude me entirely. I often caught myself imagining a partner, someone who would notice the little things, who would hold my hand without being asked, who would remember my birthday even when I forgot. And yet, here I was, folding laundry alone, the sound of the dryer sighing like a companion in a room too quiet for comfort. As I stared at the receipt, memories I had tried to bury started to surface. Of Marcus, my last serious relationship, a man who had whispered promises in my ear on starless nights and then vanished with a smile I could never quite forget. I hadn't seen him in years, not since the day he left without explanation, leaving behind nothing but a trail of questions I never dared ask aloud. My heart clenched at the thought, a familiar ache that never fully went away. I turned the receipt over in my hands, my fingers trembling slightly. The date caught my eye, 2 weeks ago, and then the most shocking part, the name at the top, Marcus. My Marcus. My mind refused to process it at first. Had he come back? Was this some cruel mistake? The air in the kitchen suddenly felt too thick, the hum of the dryer too loud, the apartment too small to hold the storm of emotions rising inside me. I sank to the floor, clutching the slip of paper like it was a lifeline and a noose all at once. The room spun lightly, the familiar sense of detergent and cotton filling my nose, grounding me in the present, even as my thoughts raced into the past. Then I noticed it, a faint smudge on the receipt, a tiny fingerprint smudged just enough to suggest it had been handled with care. And as my eyes followed the line of text that confirmed what I had feared and hoped at the same time, my phone buzzed on the counter. A message from an unknown number. I froze, heart hammering against my ribs, breath catching in my throat. The message preview glowed in the dim kitchen light, and my fingers instinctively reached for my phone. And that's when I realized the message was from him. The screen of my phone glowed like a beacon in the dim kitchen, and my thumb hovered over it, trembling. I didn't know if I wanted to open the message or throw the phone across the room. Part of me screamed that this could be another cruel trick, a ghost from the past reminding me of heartbreak. But another part, The part that still ached with every memory of him whispered that this was my chance to finally understand. Finally, with a deep breath, I unlocked the phone. The message was simple, almost painfully so. "Olivia, we need to talk." My stomach twisted into knots. The simplicity of it made my pulse quicken, as if the universe itself had paused to watch my reaction. For years, I had imagined what he might say if he ever came back. Apologies, explanations, maybe even declarations of love. But nothing could have prepared me for the sheer weight of seeing his name again after so long. I sank into the kitchen chair, my hands clutching the receipt as though it were a talisman. The hum of the dryer was deafening now, each thrum echoing like a countdown to something I wasn't sure I was ready for. Questions cascaded through my mind. Why now? Why leave a receipt for a ring I never received? And most haunting of all, did he ever truly love me, or had I been chasing a memory that didn't exist? The text had no timestamp, no clue as to where he might be. I considered calling him immediately, but my pride and caution stopped me. Instead, I typed back with trembling fingers, "Marcus, what is this?" Then I waited. Every second stretched into an eternity. My apartment felt colder, the walls closer, as if holding its breath alongside me. Moments later, the phone buzzed again. Another message. "I'll explain everything. Meet me at the cafe where we first met. Tomorrow, 5 p.m. My chest tightened. That cafe. The memory of it hit me like a wave. The soft clatter of cups, the aroma of roasted coffee beans, the way sunlight had spilled over his smile the first time he laughed in front of me. I hadn't thought about that place in years, and yet suddenly it was all I could see, hear, and feel. I sat back, staring at the ceiling, trying to steady my breathing. Part of me wanted to scream in frustration. Why now? Why leave me guessing for so long? Another part of me felt a flicker of hope, a dangerous, tantalizing pull toward the possibility of closure, or maybe something more. I realized with a jolt that my heart, stubborn as ever, still ached for him. Night fell and I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining him walking back into my life, this time with answers, apologies, maybe even the ring. The image of that tiny, perfect band kept flashing in my mind, the one I had never received but had now held in my hands through that crumpled receipt. It was more than just a piece of jewelry. It was a promise I hadn't known I'd been waiting for all these years. By morning, I was both terrified and determined. My hands shook as I brewed my coffee, the steam curling like fragile smoke around my fingers, while I rehearsed what I might say, what I might ask, and what I would demand. The receipt lay on the counter, a silent witness to my inner turmoil. I couldn't ignore it any longer. And then, just as I was about to leave for the cafe, something caught my corner of vision. Another slip of paper, smaller this time, tucked underneath the receipt. My pulse leapt. It wasn't a receipt. It was a note, and it read, "I tried to do the right thing. I hope you'll let me explain before it's too late." The words hovered in the air, heavy and urgent. My stomach sank. I knew that stepping into that cafe meant opening the door to every question I had buried for years. But even as fear gripped me, a spark of hope ignited. Maybe, just maybe, I was about to find out the truth. The next afternoon, the cafe smelled exactly as I remembered. Freshly ground coffee, warm pastries, and that faint undertone of vanilla that seemed permanently etched into the air. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, dust motes dancing lazily like tiny golden specks suspended in time.
My hands gripped the straps of my bag so tightly that my knuckles whitened. Every step toward the door felt like walking into a storm I had spent years fearing. I spotted him immediately. Marcus sat in the corner by the window, the same corner where we had shared our first coffee, our first laugh. He hadn't changed much, just a little older, lines around his eyes that weren't there before, but the same quiet intensity in his gaze. When he saw me, he rose slowly, his expression a mixture of relief and apprehension. I froze for a moment, my chest tightening as memories collided with reality.
"Olivia," he said softly, his voice barely above the cafe's background hum. Every word carried the weight of years, of things left unsaid. I sat across from him, my hands folded on the table, my eyes fixed on the cup of coffee in front of me as if it could shield me from the emotions threatening to overwhelm me. "Marcus? Why?" My voice cracked, betraying the calm I tried so hard to maintain. "Why leave? And why the receipt? Why now?" He took a deep breath, his fingers curling around his own coffee cup, trembling slightly as he spoke. "I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I was protecting you and myself. The truth is complicated, and I know it won't make what I did okay, but I've carried it every day since I left. That receipt, the ring, I bought it the day I realized I was going to lose you, but I didn't know how to give it to you without making everything worse." My stomach lurched. "You bought a ring? For me?" I whispered, disbelief and longing colliding in my chest. The idea that he had thought of me, even in my absence, made my heart ache. "Yes," he said, his voice barely audible. "I wanted to ask you to marry me that night, but I wasn't ready. I had debts, problems I thought I could fix on my own. I wanted to give you a life without worry, without secrets, but I failed, and I left without saying a word because I was ashamed and afraid you'd hate me." The cafe seemed to fade around me, the chatter of other patrons becoming a distant hum. I remembered folding that laundry, holding the crumpled receipt in my hands, feeling a confusing mix of anger and hope. And now, sitting here, looking into his eyes, I understood the weight he had carried silently all these years. I opened my mouth to speak, but the words caught in my throat. The ache of lost years and unspoken love pressed down on me, heavy and unrelenting. "Marcus, why now? Why bring this to me now?" He leaned forward, eyes earnest and unwavering. "Because I can't bear another day wondering if you'd forgive me, if you could even understand. I need you to know that I never stopped loving you, Olivia. Every decision I made, every step I took away from you was meant to protect you, even though I know it hurt more than it helped." I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. The story he was telling made sense, and yet the years of loneliness, the nights spent imagining a life with him that never came, still stung sharply. My hands shook, the coffee cup rattling slightly against the table. There was a long silence, filled with unspoken questions, the weight of what could have been and what might still be. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. My breath caught as he opened it, revealing the ring, exactly as described on that receipt, shining under the afternoon sun like a fragment of hope crystallized in gold and diamonds. I stared, unable to speak. The air between us vibrated with tension, anticipation, and a fragile thread of possibility. And just as I lifted my hand, heart pounding, ready to touch it, he said something that made my world stop completely. I froze, my hand hovering over the velvet box as his words settled into my chest like a sudden, unexpected weight. "I waited," Marcus said softly, his voice almost a whisper, "because I wanted to be certain you were still here, that you were still you. I couldn't risk asking you to be mine if I wasn't fully ready to give you everything you deserved." The room seemed impossibly still. The clatter of cups and the murmur of other patrons faded into a distant hum, leaving only the thrum of my heartbeat in my ears. My fingers trembled as I reached toward the ring, and the instant my hand brushed the velvet, a rush of memories flooded me. Our first coffee, our first laughter, the nights spent talking until dawn, and the empty ache after he left. Each memory was a knife and a salve at the same time. "Marcus," I whispered, voice breaking, tears spilling freely now. "All these years I thought you didn't care. I thought it was me you left, that I wasn't enough." His hand reached across the table, warm and steady, covering mine. "No, Olivia, it was never you. It was never anything about you. Every day away from you was my punishment, my constant reminder of what I had almost ruined. I was trying to protect you from a life with me when I wasn't ready. But I see now that protecting you didn't mean leaving you. It meant being honest, being present, being here." The sincerity in his eyes, the quiet intensity of his presence, cut through the years of anger, doubt, and loneliness that had built up inside me. I realized then that the pain of the past, the nights I had cried alone, had all led to this moment, the chance to understand, to forgive, and maybe to love again. I took a deep breath, letting it fill every corner of my chest, and finally met his gaze fully. "Marcus, I've missed you. Every day." My voice wavered, trembling under the weight of confession. "And now, I don't know how to say what I feel. It's too much to hold." He smiled softly, a gentle, almost shy smile I hadn't seen in years. "Then don't say anything yet. Just let me try to show you. Let me be here, completely, and we'll figure the rest out together." The ring in front of me sparkled, catching the sunlight like a promise suspended in time. I felt the warmth of his hand, steady and real, and I realized that love wasn't just about moments of perfection. It was about persistence, about showing up, even when fear and doubt whispered otherwise. I closed my hand over his, letting the ring remain untouched for now, savoring the weight of the choice, the magnitude of this second chance. The world outside the cafe continued on. Cars honked, pedestrians passed, and the sun dipped lower. But for a moment, the past, the loneliness, and the years of waiting fell away. There was only him, and there was only me. And in that fragile, perfect silence, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Some love stories don't end. They wait. They falter. They break. But sometimes they find their way back, stronger, wiser, and brighter than ever. I smiled through tears, leaning slightly across the table and whispered, "I think I'm ready." Marcus's hand tightened around mine, and for the first time in years, I felt entirely, unreservedly at home.